Welcome everyone to our Cook Well Berkeley class. Our theme today is flavors around the world. My name is Kim Guest. I'm a dietitian with Be Well at Work Wellness Program. And we're making a couple of recipes. You have the samples there. We're making a spring roll with tofu and a peanut sauce. And we're making a Ghanaian bean stew called Red Red. So let's get started. First of all, I'll just quickly say I was going to try to make a joke that for our international cooking class, we're traveling to Canada because both of the bloggers that these recipes are from are both Canadian. But one of them has Vietnamese ancestry and the other is from Ghana. So anyway, we are traveling around the world with these flavors, and I wanted to do this class because personally I've been inspired by foods from my travel around the world. Not that I've done that much, but a lot of other countries just use such interesting flavors with spices and herbs and sauces, and it makes the food so much more interesting and exciting. So I wanted to bring a little bit of that home. Okay, so I'll talk about some of the flavors and how you can just incorporate it into your cooking in general. But first, we are going to make the red stew. This recipe is from a blog called The Canadian African. Woman who runs it, her name is Afia, and she's from Ghana. And this is a popular Ghanaian dish. It's usually naturally plant-based. All the recipes we're doing are plant-based. And it is typically served at lunchtime. And it's traditionally made with red palm oil, which I'll try to talk a little bit about. Unfortunately, I don't have that today. I'm just going to use some kind of neutral flavored oil. And yeah, let's just get started with it. Okay, so I pre-prepared some of the ingredients just to make everything go a little faster. But we're going to cook this in a big pot. You probably don't need one this big, but we just have this or a small saucepan, and so we had to go with the big pot. And we're going to saute some onions. So I went ahead and quickly chopped some of the vegetables. So the recipe calls for 1 medium red onion. So half of it is going to be finely diced like this, and we're going to saute that, which is going to give it some really good flavor and a little more texture. And then the other half is roughly chopped because we're actually going to puree it. We're going to make a sauce with a whole bunch of vegetables that are pureed, and that's going to go in here along with some tomato sauce. And that's what kind of makes everything so saucy and delicious. Okay, so we have our pot preheating, and we're going to add a 1/4 cup of oil, which might kind of sound like a lot, but this dish serves 8, so it's really not that much per serving. And like I said, traditionally this is made with red palm oil, which, like it sounds, is red in color. And that's part of where the name comes from. This dish is also red because of all the tomato, and I guess not really the spices, mostly the tomato. So palm oil, you may have heard, kind of has a bad reputation, but it's native to West Africa, and it can be sustainably farmed there, and it's not refined. It actually has, that red color. It has a distinct flavor, but the oil palm was brought to Southeast Asia, and that's where it's being used for a lot of like processed foods, and it's leading to deforestation in places like Indonesia. So red palm oil by itself can be sustainably harvested and is traditionally used in a lot of West African cooking. Okay, but we don't have that, so we're just using, where did I put it? We're just going to use some canola oil, something kind of neutral in flavor. And we're going to throw in our onion and get that cooking. Okay. Next, we are going to make the sauce with all the vegetables. So you can use a blender or a food processor. Either one works totally fine. So we have our half of a red onion, just roughly chopped, and throw that in. And then we're also going to use ginger, tomatoes, and red bell pepper. So it's just half a red bell pepper. I used half earlier for the samples. So I'm just going to roughly chop this. Don't have to be too careful about that. And then the tomatoes, make sure you can see, tomatoes are so watery that you don't have to worry about cutting them too small because they will break down easily. So this recipe actually has a lot of vegetables in it. I think it comes out to at least 1 cup per serving. And so we have, with all the vegetables, we're getting lots of other nutrients like vitamin C, which helps you absorb the iron from the beans. Because iron from plant sources as opposed to meat is not as well absorbed. But if you pair it with vitamin C, then it's actually better absorbed. You may have also heard that if you use cast iron, the food actually can absorb some of the iron from the pan, and that can help you make sure that you're getting enough iron, especially if you don't eat a lot of animal foods. Okay, so I'm going to turn the heat down. We don't want to burn the onions, so we just kind of want medium heat. We just want them to start getting a little brown, translucent, which maybe you can see on the overhead camera. All right, so we have tomato, bell pepper, onion. We're also going to add some ginger. And I'm just going to use a measuring spoon. Oops, I actually forgot the garlic, so maybe we'll just improvise with a little bit of garlic powder. So ginger is really easy to peel. You can just use a spoon. Let's see on Zoom. You can just use a spoon to peel away the skin. Okay. And then the recipe calls for a thumb size. So you can just kind of guess. I mean, this ginger is thicker than my thumb, so I'm probably going to do something like that, like a 1-inch little cube. And I'm going to give it a rough chop before I throw it in, just because nobody wants to accidentally get a big chunk of ginger. Throw that in. And I forgot to get garlic. Somehow I missed that on my shopping list, so we'll improvise with a little bit of garlic powder. Okay, garlic powder. And then the hot pepper is optional, so I did not put in the samples just to be safe. The recipe calls for a Scotch bonnet pepper, which I couldn't find, but I got the closest thing I could find, which is a habanero. Since we're not eating these samples, I'll maybe just put half of this in. And then I'm wearing gloves. If you do cook with hot peppers, be very careful of your fingers. Maybe wear gloves because it can really burn if it gets under your fingernails or into a cut, or if you accidentally touch your eye. It's not good. Okay. And we're going to add a little bit of water just to kind of help everything blend up. So I'll do 1/3 cup. And this is all going to cook in the pot anyway, so if you accidentally add a little bit too much water, you still have the opportunity to evaporate some of that out. Okay, so I'll move this here so people on Zoom can hopefully see that. Oops. I have to make sure everything is set up properly. Okay, it's a little different from my home food processor. Okay, here we go. Give this a stir. Okay, so you don't have to get it super smooth. A little bit of texture, I think, is fine. So we can go ahead and throw this in. I'll take out the blade first. Throw that in. Oh, I smell that ginger already. Oops, throwing things. Okay. Now let's also add the tomato paste and the tomato sauce. So the recipe calls for a 1/4 cup of tomato paste. And it'll just be a little easier to measure if I use the tablespoon. So I always like to do pop quiz with math in here. How many tablespoons are in a 1/4 cup? 4. Yes. Nice job. 4 tablespoons in a 1/4 cup. How many teaspoons in a tablespoon? 3. Yes. So how many teaspoons in a 1/4 cup? Yes, good job. I like to keep you on your toes. Okay. The last one was kind of unnecessary. I don't know if you ever need to do that calculation. Okay. 1/4 cup of tomato paste, and then we also need tomato sauce. There's a lot of tomato in this dish. We got tomatoes in the sauce, we got tomato paste, we got tomato sauce. So now we need 1 2/3 cup tomato sauce. And so there's a lot of cooked tomato product in here, and tomatoes have a phytonutrient called lycopene, which is actually more available when it's cooked. So you might hear people say, oh, you shouldn't cook your vegetables, you don't get as much nutrients, but some vegetables and some nutrients actually are more available when it's cooked. So, and I think a lot of vegetables and things taste better when they're cooked. So no need to eat everything raw. Okay, so we have 1 cup plus 1/3 plus 2/3. Okay, so that's all of our tomato sauce. And now there's a lot more liquid in there, so I'm going to turn up the heat. And we're also going to add the spices. So we have, I measured out already, we have a tablespoon of curry powder, a tablespoon of cumin, which is kind of a lot. Cumin's a strong flavor, but we're using a lot of spices here. And a teaspoon of ground cloves, which is kind of a lot. Cloves are a very strong flavor. Maybe you could taste it. If it's a little too strong for you in this dish, you can always do a bit less. But cloves are commonly used in Ghanaian cooking. Okay. And then we're also going to add some bay leaves. That's not it. We're going to add 2 bay leaves. And next month, we're really going to talk about the environment and cooking with our plant-based and planet-friendly cooking class. But I like to tie it into everything. So you probably heard me, if you've come to these classes before, I like to bring my own jars to Berkeley Bowl, or some other stores let you do this, and you weigh them, and then you fill it with your spices, and then you weigh it again, and then they take out the weight of the jar. And you can do this for, your grains, dried beans. You could use dried black-eyed peas for this recipe, and it will be even more affordable. Beans are a very affordable food, but these cans I think were a couple of dollars each. But if you buy them dried, they're like $1 or $2 per pound, and then they double in size at least, once you cook them. So beans are really affordable. Anyway, these bay leaves cost 25 cents. So if you were to buy a jar of them, it would be a few dollars at least. So I bought all the spices in bulk. I know this jar is ridiculously big for this amount. That's what I had. I didn't put the chili flakes into the other recipe either, just to make sure it wasn't too spicy. But this was 64 cents. So, you can really save some money and reduce waste when you buy things in bulk, if that's available to you. Okay, so we got all the spices in there. We also want to add some bouillon paste. So the recipe calls for bouillon powder. I just happen to have the paste, so I'm just going to use that. And usually I use this to make broth, but this recipe is a little different because it's kind of like the water is in the sauce, so we're not specifically making broth. So if you did add broth to this recipe, it would be a bit too watery. So that's another way that this kind of paste can come in handy. Oops. I'm just going to use my finger because my gloves are getting dirty anyway. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the bouillon paste. I know that I always talk about in my classes too. But it lasts a long time. You just keep it in the fridge. It takes up no space. And it can save you money because this one jar is equivalent to, I think it's 38 cups of broth. So it's like one quart of store-bought broth is, or maybe 2 quarts is the same cost as one of those jars. So you can save some money too. Okay. Let's see. So we're gonna let this cook now. Oh, these gloves are a little too small for my warm hands. Okay. Anyway, we're gonna turn this down and cover it and just let this cook for half an hour to let the flavors develop. And then after that, then we'll add the black-eyed peas and the spinach. So spinach is optional. Black-eyed peas, of course, you could cook them from dried, but to save time, I'm just going to use canned. Okay, so let's move on now to the spring rolls. These spring rolls are from a blog called The Viet Vegan. It's a woman named Lisa. And all the recipes are plant-based on her website. This dish is typically made with shrimp and maybe pork, but we're gonna make the plant-based version. In Vietnamese, it's called goi cuon. I went ahead and prepared some of the ingredients ahead of time. So let's make a little bit of space here. Okay, so what we did, first we have the marinated tofu. So the marinade is made with soy sauce, let's see, dark soy sauce specifically. What is sometimes called just regular soy sauce, or you'll see in the store it just says soy sauce. That is actually light soy sauce. So dark soy sauce is a little sweeter and thicker. So you can buy that specifically. Or as a substitute, you can make something similar using regular soy sauce, or this is actually tamari, which is very similar tasting. It just doesn't have wheat in it, unlike soy sauce. So for the amount we need for this recipe, which is a 1/4 cup, you could use 3½ tablespoons of soy sauce, which is how much less than a 1/4 cup?
Oh, half.
Yes. Okay, see, that's why we're doing math in here. That's basically a 1/4 cup minus ½ tablespoon of soy sauce. And then you can fill in the rest with molasses, which is thick and a little bit sweet. It's not super sweet. I think it's actually a byproduct of making sugar. So it's not super sweet. So then you can add a little bit of sugar, and that will get you something that's a similar flavor, not exactly the same, but similar in flavor to a dark soy sauce. So I mixed up a 1/4 cup of that concoction, plus a teaspoon of sugar. I left out the chili flakes, but it calls for ½ teaspoon chili flakes and ½ teaspoon of garlic powder. And I just left out the salt because I think it had enough salt as is. So mix that up, drain the tofu. And the way that I like to drain tofu is just between a couple of plates. For me, it's a bit less messy. So I take out the tofu, drain it, and put it between 2 plates, and then put something heavy on top. And then if you are going to do something like coat the tofu in spices or cornstarch and you want it to be really dry, then you could maybe dab it with a towel. But that's how I like to do it. You could buy a tofu press, but if you have a small kitchen and don't want more gadgets, then that's an easy way to do it. And then you just throw the dishes in the dishwasher or just wash them by hand. Okay, anyway, so put the drained tofu or pressed tofu, or sorry, cut it into pieces first. So this recipe makes about 10 spring rolls. So what I would do is cut the tofu in half lengthwise and then cut it into 5. And then you'll get 10 pieces that are about this size. So they are a good size for spring rolls. So put this into the marinade. You can marinate it for up to an hour. You can do it even longer if you want. But that's how you get it nice and brown and full of flavor, which I think is good because the other ingredients, other than the herbs, are a little bit bland. So this helps infuse flavor throughout the entire spring roll. Okay, so then what I did is I just put some oil in the pan. You want to use something that's pretty non-stick because tofu is pretty sticky, and then just flipped it until each side was pretty brown. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to shuffle things around a little bit here. Actually, no, I don't need to. I did this ahead of time. Okay, so I have some warm water here. And I'm going to use this to rehydrate the rice paper. So actually it looks a little bit hot, so I'm going to let that cool off for a minute. So you don't need it to be super hot. Okay. Make a little space. Okay, so for the assembly, we're going to use these round rice paper. And I also pre-cooked the rice noodles. This is rice vermicelli. So all you have to do is put it in warm water for 2 minutes and then drain it, and then it's ready to go. So it cooks really quickly. And make sure you can see. Let's put that there. And then we have our other vegetables. So we have lettuce, mint, and chives, as well as cucumber. And you can use other vegetables if you want, but I was trying to keep it fairly traditional. There is usually cilantro in here, and I was going to get some just to show you, but I just can't even stand the smell of cilantro. I'm sorry, so I left it out. Yes, I have the gene where I can't taste it right. It's very sad. I really wish I liked cilantro. It's in so many good foods, but when I worked in the kitchen, there could be somebody that was farther away from me than the corner of this room. If they were cut into cilantro, I could smell it immediately, and I'd go, "Oh, what's that smell?" So, sorry. Anybody else not like cilantro in here? I know Thomas. Does everybody love cilantro? I'm sorry. I should have sucked it up and had the cilantro. Okay, now I know for next time. Okay, so we're going to chop up the cucumbers, and I like to just cut them into little strips so that they're a little more flexible. You can put 4 or so in each spring roll. And sometimes I just cut out this seed part because it's not as exciting. Cut it into little strips. Just watch your fingertips if you do this. You don't have to be perfect. And yeah, I found that about half of one of these large English cucumbers works well. You can use other types of cucumbers, but these are nice because you can eat the seeds. I mean, you can eat the seeds on regular cucumbers, but they're just a bit bitter. So you don't have to pull out the seeds on these, so that makes it a little bit easier. And they're a little less waxy on the outside than the cucumbers that you see at the grocery store, kind of the most common ones. Okay. One time I made these, I made a quick pickled daikon radish and carrot, which is commonly used in Vietnamese food. And you just shred the vegetables and make a mixture of vinegar and a little sugar and water that's warm and pour it over the vegetables, and you can just keep it in the fridge. And I thought that gave it a really interesting like flavor contrast. You have the sour, and then you have a little bit, well, it's a little bit sweet. There's sugar in there too. And then we have the soft tofu and the crunch of the vegetables. So it's just a lot of different flavors and textures together. So, you can make spring rolls with anything. I've seen recipes where they did fruit and other things and made like a sweet dipping sauce. So you can get creative, but we're going to keep it a little more traditional, even though it's not totally traditional because we're using tofu for this recipe. Okay, so we have all our vegetables ready. We got the lettuce, mint, chives, tofu is over there. Okay, so let's go ahead and make one of these. So the rice paper, similar to the rice noodles, just needs to rehydrate, and this only takes a few seconds, and um, it will actually soften as you'll notice it softening before your eyes as you're assembling the spring roll. Okay, so I've just really dipped it in, especially because that water's pretty hot. Just dipped it in for a second, and you can see it's already getting pretty pliable, and you'll see by the end it'll be even more pliable than this. It has like a texture on it that's just going to disappear in a few seconds. It's really cool. Okay, so hopefully you can see this. So the way that I like to do this is put down the lettuce first, and that's going to kind of hold everything and prevent the corner edges of the cucumber and stuff from poking out. So we have our cucumber, and then the chives. I'm just going to kind of fold them in half and throw that in there. And have more mint over here. 2 or 3 mint leaves. If you're not a fan of the mint, you can leave that out too. And let's see, tofu.
Could you use basil?
Yeah, you could do basil too. Mm-hmm. Yeah, whatever herbs you like. Yeah, you can do other vegetables. You can do raw carrot in here. Basically, just things that are the right size so that they won't poke out the ends. And then I'm just going to put a bit of the rice vermicelli on here, like that. And you can just wrap it all up together, or a lot of the recipes that I looked up kind of had the protein part sort of on the outside so you could see it a little bit better. So I'll do a few of these so hopefully you can see. But what I'm going to do is kind of wrap it up, everything but the tofu first. I'm going to fold it over. And then I'm going to continue wrapping. That way it's like the tofu is sort of on its own layer. And then you can see it there on the outside. I'll pull it up for a zoom. Yeah. So just make sure you wrap it really tight. I made these with a friend, and that's what we were finding is that if you don't wrap it tight, then it will fall apart. So it takes a little practice, but fortunately these things are kind of stretchy. It has it's a little bit more forgiving. Oops, I shouldn't have put that in the noodles. It got a little. Okay, we'll use a different one. I'll pretend that didn't happen. Okay, let me get one of my little handy plates. So yeah, the rice paper is so super sticky. So if you're gonna serve these, you want them to not be touching each other, because then they're all gonna meld together, and it's gonna be really hard to eat. If you make them ahead of time, same idea. You want to kind of wrap them up individually so that they don't stick together. But they do, really they're best eaten fresh. They do kind of harden a little bit, like the outside will harden if you make them ahead of time. So if you really like the flavors here and you wanted to do something for meal prep, you could do a deconstructed spring roll bowl, and that's better for meal prep. So you could just take all the components, maybe not the rice paper, but everything else, and put it together in a bowl and have a dressing on the side, and then put the dressing on right before you eat it, and you'll get all those flavors, but then it's easier to make ahead of time. And if you're not great at doing the wrapping part, then you can just skip that. Okay, so let's do another one. So again, we're going to put down the lettuce. We'll put the cucumbers. I do about 4 of those in there. And some mint leaves. I actually worked at a wrap shop in college and a sandwich shop in high school. So I kind of got some experience with wrapping things really tight. So I have a little bit of a head start. So if it takes you a minute to get it down, then don't worry about it. Okay, rice vermicelli. Yeah, piece of tofu. So I kind of start everything on like the closer half of the rice paper. It's probably hard to tell because it's clear, but this is the outline if you can see that. So that's about the halfway point. So what I'm going to do is take the end and kind of tuck that in. Fold it all over. So if you don't fold it over soon enough, then it tends to fall apart a bit. So that's kind of already wrapped up, and the tofu is on the outside. And I'm going to just continue wrapping and making sure to pull it tight. And then again, you have the tofu on the outside. And then you can also cut them in half to serve if you want. So I'll show people on Zoom. That's what it looks like on the inside. Okay, these plates are teeny tiny, so that's all going to stick together, but that's all right. Okay. So maybe we can make some more towards the end, but let's turn back to the stew for now, which I can see is steaming away, bubbling away. Okay, so, we put a lot of spices in here. So this half an hour for everything to cook is going to help those flavors marry and get nice and integrated into the stew. And I don't know if it's been quite half an hour, but just for demonstration purposes, let's go ahead and do everything else. So we have 2 cans of black-eyed peas that I already rinsed and drained. And I know everybody always likes the can opener in this class. So I have to show this off. This is a Kuhn Rikon can opener. And you actually open it on the top. So then there's no sharp edges, and you can sort of reseal the can after. I mean, it's not super tight, but at least there's no sharp edges. It's a little bit safer. Okay. 1 can. 2 cans. And we'll give that a stir. And then at this point, you could maybe leave the lid off to let some of that water evaporate and let the sauce thicken. So we are going to actually add spinach as well, and that's going to release a lot of water into the dish. Okay, so let's just let that cook for a few more minutes. And there's lots more that I want to say about these recipes, so sorry, I need to refer to my notes. But let's go back to the red stew for now. So again, this recipe is completely plant-based. You could serve it with rice and fried or baked plantains if you like, which is, I think, what I did in the picture there. Unfortunately, I didn't do that for the samples, but you can imagine the plantains make it really, really good. What else? So in Ghana, spicy soups and stews are a pretty common dish. They're often served with a starchy food like cassava, cocoa yam, plantains, or corn, or rice, which could be plain, it could be jollof, and there's a few different types of traditional rice dishes. The climate in Ghana, I think, helps you kind of understand the type of cuisine that they have there. So it's sub-Saharan West Africa is where Ghana is. It's one of the smallest countries in Africa, but it actually has 4 different climate zones. So it's the southern part is near the ocean, so that's kind of more of like a tropical climate. So that's where you get some of the ingredients that you associate more with tropical areas, like the plantains, some fruit, tubers, and the palm oil. The oil palm grows there. That's where you get palm oil from. And then they have deciduous forest, a transition zone, and then the savanna, which is drier. Common ingredients are some of which are used in this recipe: tomatoes, onion, pepper, ginger, spices. So all things that we used here. Some common spices are allspice, curry powder, thyme, and bay leaf. And legumes are a common ingredient. And some of the ingredients that we used here are the foundation for many dishes in Ghana, and that's the ginger, tomato, peppers, and onions. So nutritionally, again, we got our combination of plant-based iron, vitamin C, from the tomato, the pepper, and the spinach. All those vegetables provide vitamin C. And also want to talk about black-eyed peas. So they're a legume. They're called a pea, but they're like a bean basically. And they originate in West Africa and grow in warm regions around the globe. And like other beans, they have a lot of fiber. They have some protein and vitamins and minerals like folate, which is a B vitamin, vitamin A, and a few others. And I'm going to talk more about this next month in the plant-based and planet-friendly class, but beans and legumes are on, I think it's the WHO or some organization has a group of like the future 50 foods, the foods that are most nutritionally dense, don't take a lot of resources to grow, affordable, accessible, and beans are very high on that list. I just got an email this morning. I get a weekly or a daily email for dietitians with articles. Jaylee maybe saw this about beans. Everybody's saying just eat more beans. So the dietary guidelines recommend that we eat about 1.5 cups of beans per week, but on average, people in the U.S. eat maybe 1/3 cup in an entire week. So again, super affordable, really easy to use, so versatile. So eat more beans. Just not too many at once. It might give you a stomach ache. So if you're incorporating more high fiber foods into your diet, you could do that slowly so you don't feel too bloated and gassy. Okay. Also, there's a lot of tomato product in this recipe. So tomatoes provide dietary fiber, some B vitamins, also some iron, potassium, which is kind of hard to get enough of unless you eat a lot of variety of fruits and vegetables. Because even bananas, when we think potassium, you might think bananas. There's only about 10% of the daily value in one banana. So that's another reason to make sure you're eating a lot of fruit and vegetables and getting a nice variety. And I already talked about palm oil. Yeah, okay, so that's the stew. So that's been cooking for a few minutes. It's still a little bit thin, but we can just let it keep cooking with the lid off to evaporate out some of the water. So let's go ahead and add the spinach. So I have one bunch of spinach here, not baby spinach, just regular spinach. We washed it really well because spinach grows in sandy soil, and so you don't want that sand in there. So we washed it a couple of times, like fully immersed it, and then put it in the salad spinner. And it's going to cook down quite a bit, but I'm just going to tear it by hand in half, maybe a little bit more, just to make it a little easier to eat. And you could use other greens if you want to, but some of them, like if you were to use collard greens, they will just take a little bit longer to cook, so you might want to add them a bit earlier in the process. Okay. And we'll stir that in. And then that just needs to wilt, and then this will be all done. And you can also taste it, see if it adds more salt. I think really the only salt source is the bouillon paste. So, but that stuff is pretty salty. So I think for your samples, I did not add any additional salt. Okay. So let's see how we're doing. Okay, we have a few minutes. Let's go back to the spring rolls. I'm going to try to multitask and make some more so you can see how to wrap it and talk about spring rolls. Yeah, if you're not familiar with rice paper, there's all kinds of fun things you can do with it. We did a class, I think it was last year, where we made bacon out of it. Bacon. So what you do is you make a marinade that has a bunch of spices and some liquid smoke and some of the flavors that you associate with bacon, and you dip it in that, and then you just bake it. And I've made that for a lot of people, and even though you're not going to fool anybody that's baking, it's still just like a tasty, crunchy thing that you can put on top of other dishes. So that's kind of a fun way to use rice paper that's a little non-traditional. Okay, let's see here. I think I already said some of these things. Okay, so let's talk about Vietnam. So Vietnam has a tropical climate, so it's quite warm. It has, if you look at a map of how Vietnam looks, there's a lot of coastline, and they get a lot of rain. So rice is a staple. There's a lot of fish and seafood. and leafy greens and herbs. So we have both leafy greens and herbs in this recipe with the chives and the mint. And ground nuts and coconut are also common ingredients. So like the peanut sauce, peanuts are considered a ground nut as opposed to a tree nut like cashews and almonds and things that grow on trees. So there's a lot of dishes have like the yin and yang, kind of the opposite or complementary flavors. So like sweet and salty, or cooling and warming, and fresh and fermented. So that's why I liked the quick pickled vegetables in here. Even though they're not technically fermented, they kind of have that tang of a fermented dish with the fresh, refreshing lettuce and chives and mint. It was a really nice contrast. So common seasonings are chili, lime, ginger, shallot, peppers, fish sauce, cilantro, mint, lemongrass, green onions, garlic chives, perilla leaf, ginger, galangal, cinnamon, like Saigon cinnamon, and tamarind. And also, we have to mention there's a French influence. The French colonized Vietnam from 1700s to mid 1900s. So that's why, or one example is banh mi. It's a sandwich made with baguette. So that's an example of the French influence. Okay, nutritionally with this dish, we also have plant-based sources of iron with the tofu and the peanut butter. And the vitamin C is coming from the leafy greens, or the lettuce. And other sources of vitamin C, vitamin C is in a lot of fruits and vegetables. It's really not hard to get enough. So it's also in broccoli, peppers, cauliflower. Is there any fruit that you think of when you think vitamin C? Oranges, yeah, citrus, also strawberries. So it's really not hard to pair your plant-based iron with some vitamin C. And of course, tofu is providing some protein, which we need for a lot of things, but it also helps keep you full, and it's good for your immune system and building muscle. And if you're curious about tofu, we did an entire class on tofu last month. And all of our classes are recorded, and they're on our virtual programs page, and we post all of our recipes on our website as well. So if you missed a class, I don't know if anybody's going to sit there and watch it for an hour. Maybe you can have it on in the background while you're doing something else. But all of our classes from the last few years are available too. Okay, I think that was all I wanted to say. So do you want to see one more spring roll? We have a couple minutes. Okay. One more.
It doesn't matter what side you do, because there's usually like a.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to matter which side. Yeah, this side is smooth, and then this side is textured, but the texture just kind of seems to magically disappear when it gets wet. So you could use either side. So what types of things would you all put in your spring rolls? If you could make up your own recipe right now, what would you like to have in there?
Beets.
Beets? Oh. Sounds good.
I'll have carrots.
Carrots? Yeah, carrots would be a nice crunch. What else? Anybody on Zoom? I can't see the chat anyway. If you're on Zoom, let us know. What would you put in your spring rolls? Or maybe you want to get creative and do something with fruit or something totally different. Okay, I think that's everything. Okay. So again, we have everything kind of on the bottom half here, and then the tofu on the outside. Tuck it all in, and then tightly wrap it up. So for everyone on Zoom, there's another one. Let's see. And we'll cut it in half so you can see that. I don't think I mentioned the sauce. So this sauce that we used was pretty simple. It was just a mixture of soy sauce and hoisin, and what else was in there? One other thing. Sriracha. Okay, so for the samples, I put like a dot of sriracha in there. So if you like it spicy, you can definitely add more. There's lots of different, you can use all kinds of different recipes for dipping sauce. A more traditional one, I think, is more like a watery sauce with vinegar. So you could do that if you prefer. You can make it spicier if you want. One thing I want to mention, sometimes hoisin has alcohol in it. It might have wheat in it. So if you have sensitivities to any of those ingredients, then just keep that in mind. This one doesn't. It is water, sugar, vinegar, soybeans, rice, and then a bunch of other seasonings and things. So that's kind of the main ingredients in hoisin sauce. Okay, so let's take a look at this and then we'll wrap up. So you can see, I don't know if you can tell on the video actually, there was a little bit of water on top coming from the spinach. So we'll just kind of stir that in, and that actually looks pretty good, but if you want it thicker, you could let it continue to cook and it will get a bit thicker. So let me see if I can. Okay, first we'll hold it up for Zoom. That's what it looks like. And then for everybody here, I guess you can see it there too. So that's how it looks, nice and thick. Lots of spices, really delicious and easy. So let's wrap up with the raffle. Does everybody have their raffle ticket?